We're traveling in the North Country Fair.
Good afternoon. I'm Hugh Ruppersburg, a retired professor of English. You've heard from all of our speakers how Judith Cofer was a number of different people: a writer, a teacher, a mother and grandmother, and a partner in marriage, and a friend, and a passionate representative of who and what she was, a Latina woman born in Puerto Rico, living most of her life and working in the Deep South. She truly embraced these roles. I knew her, before I knew her personally, as a writer whose work I admired. And then I got to know her as a member of the department, the English department. And gradually, we became friends, and I've counted her a friend for at least 30 years. And my friendship with her was pretty much centered on the English department. We exchanged emails, we chatted in Park Hall, and we met in downtown Athens for occasional lunches. We all discussed mutual interests that we had, books we were reading, films we had seen, our families. She would talk of projects she was working on, books she was writing. She shared drafts of what she was working on, and sometimes she sought my opinion, which she really didn't need because she had a pretty firm sense of where she wanted to go. One time she deconstructed an episode of The X-Files, which concerned the chupacabra, which was something I knew very little about and she knew more about. She had a great sense of humor, and people have talked about this, but I really can't overemphasize it. She was a very funny, witty, sly person. She liked to kid me for being too reserved, for instance. And that was an aspect of our friendship that I really appreciated. She always talked about her students, in whom she took great satisfaction. Of course, several of them have been here today. She talked often about her husband, John, and her daughter Tanya, and of her grandson, Eli, and son-in-law, Dory. Depending on what she was working on, she would talk about her life in Puerto Rico or in Georgia. She would talk about her mother or her father or her brother. I felt that I came to know her family in a very personal way. As people have said, she really did love writing. She worked hard at writing. She was extremely self-disciplined. She was a daunting model in that regard to her students and to her colleagues, certainly to me. She saw writing as her vocation. She saw it as her higher calling, and she answered that calling with every particle of her being. She was so pleased that others admired and enjoyed her work. She gave much of herself to her department and to her colleagues and to this university. Whenever I asked, she would come visit my classes without hesitation. Her life and her presence really did enrich us all. I wanted to end my comments by reading the closing lines of her poem, Where You Need to Go, which is one of my favorite of her poems, from her book, A Love Story Beginning in Spanish. Today, opening my eyes again in my mother's house, I know I will experience certain things that come to me in dreams and deja vu. The timeless tolling of bells, because time must be marked for mortal days in minutes, in hours, and in measured intervals. To remind us as we drink our morning cafe that we too shall turn to dust, the rustling of palm fronds against Venetian blinds, of water running over a woman's hands, pots and pans put in their places, living sounds from my childhood, and muffled words I cannot quite decipher, spoken in a language I now have to translate, like signs in a foreign airport you recognize as universal symbols. And soon their true meaning will come to you. It must. For this is the place where you decide where you need to go.